So, for example, 2 million people marching in the streets of London against Britain going to war in Iraq without a second UN resolution could be the basis of a representative claim by the demonstration's leaders. So also in this category, a mirroring claim is based on descriptive similarity between the person who says, I'm a representative, and his or her audience. There's lots of experience, for example, in a range of countries now with things called citizens' juries. A citizens' jury is a group of about 30 or so randomly selected citizens who debate an issue face-to-face and make recommendations. A citizens' jury might actually be incorporated into policy making and gain legitimacy from the random basis of its selection. It makes it, in a way, a kind of nation in one room. In a very different sense, a mirroring representative claim may arise along the lines of, and forgive my pronunciation if I've got this wrong, Subcomandante Marcos of the Zapatista army in Chiapas, in Mexico. An inspiration for many in the misnamed anti-globalization movement. And Marcos argues that his army does not speak for the people of Chiapas. It doesn't speak for them, rather it listens. I'm quoting him. It listens or it echoes the voice of the people, adding nothing to it. There are grounds to be skeptical, true, but it's an interesting style, an interesting case of claim. And what finally of self-representation? Sometimes we claim to represent something about ourselves that no one else can possibly accurately speak for. Who can know the full range of your interests or of mine? That's something I want to return to very briefly in a moment. So much for potential non-elective representative claims. What can we make of these claims? Are any of them plausible or democratically acceptable? So I'm in the process of working on some criteria that we might use to respond to those questions. Specifically, 3 sorts of criteria: connecting, confirming, and untaintedness. The key ones, I think, are the confirming criteria, where we need to ask a straightforward question. Can a representative claim be tested? Can it be tested? Does a claim suggest the existence of a constituency which we could look to see if the claim is actually accepted? Do the people being spoken for accept, reject, or ignore the claim that's made on their behalf? And if they don't accept it, having had the opportunity to do so, we have very good grounds to be suspicious of a given claim. So with confirming criteria, I'm skipping over the connecting because they're slightly less important. We need to see if there's some constituency that could respond to a claim and then look for evidence of a response. And then there are untaintedness criteria, for want of a better word. I will come up with a better word, but I didn't this morning, that's all. And here the key question is the claim acceptable, is a representative claim acceptable, precisely because it is untainted by formal election processes, precisely because it is not elective. Now, electoral pressures, it's sometimes argued, lead elected representatives to look to short-term interests and parochial interests. So an ability to represent effectively might require distance from electoral pressures. So from a different angle, being an elected representative forces one to address, in rhetoric at least, a wide array of concerns all at once. Bundling many issues together in an election manifesto, for example, may not do justice to citizens' feelings or views when it comes to particular issues. Now that fact creates space for non-elected representatives to present themselves as championing neglected or buried issues. The phone, the lights. Now, the type of political theory I try to do is interpretive, not legislative. This is Zygmunt Bauman's distinction. I'm going to give you a caricature. Legislative theorists go to a quiet corner, think hard, and come up with the answer. Interpretive theorists assume answers are possibly plural and are outside the door in the world of practice. So being an interpretivist, I used to be legislative, but I was young then. I wrote a book that's in that vein. Interpretive theorists, being an interpretive theorist means not having quick or easy answers to anything much, I'm afraid. The answers come slow and hard. I don't have time here to go into all my reasons, but there are just one or two brief observations about the types of representative claim and the evaluative criteria, which I'll just mention. And the good thing is you're not allowed to ask me any questions, so I can just mention them. First of all, the wider interests in new voices claims are, it seems to me, increasing in salience and in frequency. Many of these claims also involve untaintedness, or they kind of evoke untaintedness, and we often seem receptive to those sorts of claims. Geldof, is one amongst many different sorts of examples. Secondly, being in or connected to government hierarchies, being a part of government or too close to it, appears less secure as a basis for representative claims than once it was. And thirdly, various ideas of self-representation and mirroring are gathering increasing interest. These often involve new styles of doing democracy differently, and ideas of direct democracy, referendums, the influence of Marcos that I mentioned, forms of DIY representation, all come in there. Now, like a lot of inquiry, like a lot of research into politics, on the issue of representation, there are no easy answers. And these criteria are things I need to refine, extend, and so on. This is work in progress that I've been hitting you with. But to summarize and to speculate just a little bit, the distinctive strength of electoral claims tend to be closely tied to the idea of authorization. Elected politicians can claim to speak for us because we voted for them, because we authorized them. The distinctive strength on the other side of non-elective claims tends to be closely tied to authenticity. These claimants are often not tied so closely to the limits and problems of our political systems, and that opens up space for them to claim to speak for interests more directly or with more authenticity. If I didn't hate people who do it so much, I would do authenticity, so you kind of get the point. But there, I've done it. Now, the tensions between the need for authorization and the desire for authenticity run deep. Now, authorization and authenticity share a common root, of course, in the idea of authoring, of being one's own author, of speaking for oneself. So elective and non-elective representation are in tension with each other. And underlying that, the principles of authorization and authenticity are likewise in tension. Now, arguably, the tension between the two is actually productive. If democracy is not so much a thing, and more a field of debate, I have to say a zone of contestation, I think. I wasn't aware I had anything to do with that. Then this tension, I think, can be seen as enlivening democracy rather than undermining it. So what I want to do in all my work here with elected representatives is to deny any prior assumption that they are fully legitimate, as we often think they are. When it comes to unelected representatives, I want to deny any prior assumption that they are illegitimate, as we often assume that they are. I always like to ask of my work that question. It's a dangerous question. Sometimes the answer is disturbing. But I think in terms of various real-world problems, some of which I've mentioned in passing, exploring the representative claim can, for example, push us to take a fresh look at seemingly fixed notions like representative democracy, question artificial boundaries between culture, art, and politics, to go beyond geographical ideas of representation confined to nations and regions, to cross boundaries between the public and the private, and between state and civil society, to consider seriously unconventional and hybrid styles of representation. And it can even help us to think around and across the human-non-human boundary, and to see the possibility of representing politically radically diverse interests.